many retailers who have a multiple number of outlets and want to organise their business with only a few people, they need help. So they turn to a major major publisher and say, can you please help us? We don't want to buy from individual companies because that means we've got X number of visits, X number of negotiations, X number of orders, X number of deliveries, X number of payments. You can imagine if you've got 10 or 20 or 200 or 600 outlets, you really want to rationalize. If you're a retailer, you want to rationalize your business to make it as slick as it possibly can be. So that's when they ask the major companies, if you're a major supplier to us, could you organize all the other stuff? And that's really what brokers do. They try and get to understand what the retailer wants. They then plan the retail space that the retailer wants. The retailer tends to, and we deal with about 150 independent retailers, plus John Lewis. If I look at John Lewis, they would say, could you please gather together all the good publishers' cards in one place so that we can come along and pick the ones we like? So that's exactly what we do. We invite you to submit your cards into our showroom in Milton Keynes. We organise it. We ask you to fill in forms which tell us what the price point is. You send us an image, an electronic image. We put those all into our system. John Lewis then come and say, we like this. This hasn't been doing so well, so we'll cut that out and we'll have a bit of this. And so they form an inclusion list of publishers that they want to work with. Generally speaking, they leave it to us to try and work out how do we cascade down from the biggest outlet, and in John Lewis's case that's Oxford Street. So they'll plan Oxford Street meticulously with us. They'll spend about a week doing that, fine-tuning their occasions, relations and age displays, and fine-tuning their independent publishers of bank and birthday cards. And from that, we would have an inclusion list of the products that we could to use across the estate. We then take every space that they have, which is all quite individual, and we then try and break it down exactly which cards will go into that space, and that then becomes the template for the season. And the season's usually at least a year with a 6-month review. So within that, there's a review. If you're not performing in 6 months, they will then start to make tweaks and changes, but they won't really review the whole thing in a shorter space than a year. So that's generally the pattern. We would then be asked to put in an initial stock. So, and John Lewis has about 50 outlets, say, so they would be asking for an initial period, a stock to last them for the first installation, and then we would be asked to hold about another 8 weeks of potential sale in our warehouse. We then go to you, the publisher, and say, could you please supply us the initial stock plus the 8 weeks or so anticipated sale? And that then would be asked, that product now needs to come into our warehouse, but it still remains your product. We haven't bought it yet. So it's still at your risk, your product's worth in our warehouse. And it's not until that first order goes in that we then have what do they call it? An automatic self-billing process. So the moment that it leaves our warehouse and is bought by John Lewis, that triggers a self-bill to you, and you will then be paid 30 days from that date, or I don't know whether John Lewis is on end of month, but I think it's on 30 days from the date, and we do an accounting every 2 weeks. So, and every 2 weeks you will then get exactly which stores your cards arranged in, exactly what the sale in that period of time has been, and exactly what stock is still left in our warehouse. And we will then so you'll keep a good monitor every time we contact you, good monitor of how much is selling and how your product is doing. And then periodically we will be asking for reorders, so giving you 6 weeks to make the next batch. It's quite a generous pace of time. I think it should be more like 4 weeks, but generally speaking, we manage to 6 weeks. So you'll get 6 weeks notice to make the next lot of stock. But you've got to understand, talking about your cash flow, your product comes into our building and we probably take 2 or 3 weeks for it to go into store while it's all getting organised. So you've got probably about 12 weeks plus stock sitting without any money coming to you, and it's only when that starts being pushed out to that retailer will you start to get your money in. But it's quicker than the 90 days you would if you were selling in direct to them. So it swings and roundabouts. This idea that you get weekly or bi-weekly sales information and it gives you a chance of controlling and working out and making sure that your product is working. And you can see if it's not working, you'll be thinking maybe I'll be coming out the next time that's going in, but that gives you a chance to take a little bit of control. But that's really how the process works. For the independent independent retailers, I said we have about 150 odd garden centres and other department stores and independent shops who ask us to do the same process. I'm told that we give you, I say I'm told because I don't actually do it anymore, as you can imagine, we give you, the publishers, the opportunity every time we go into a store to say whether you'd like to supply that store or not. So it might mean that you've got a shop next door to the one that we're proposing to sell your product in, and you can then say, do you know what, that's going to upset my business, I don't want my product in there. Now, I think that we are a bit generous to you guys because that makes our world very difficult. And I think we're making it much harder. We've got to move forward as we get more outlets. We can't then cause ourselves the amount of administration to say, can we allow this product to be sold into that place or not, depending on whether you say so or not. So we're working a little bit more to streamline it, otherwise we will get too expensive in providing that service. So it's again swings and roundabouts, but I'm very conscious that whatever happens, we have to make it work, not just for the retailer in terms of the money and what they're getting, but for each publisher, that it works for them too. And they understand that balance. And that's one of the beauties of John Lewis, because they really get that. If they're going to have a different ranging of products from the more commodity stuff that you see in many supermarkets, they've got to have that, and they've got to understand what it's like for you guys. And they spend the time and they spend the effort, which is not common, and that doesn't appear everywhere. But that's generally how it works.